Well, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the Cathedral this evening. Thank you for braving the elements to be out. My name is Tim Darwin. I'm a rector here and Dean of Niagara, and we're delighted to have you with us this evening for Cathedral Chats. As you're probably aware, this is being offered in a hybrid format. So for those who are joining us online, we are delighted to have you with us as well. For those of you who are joining us for Cathedral Chat for the first time, what we're hoping to do with Cathedral Chat is to offer a space where our congregation and the broader Hamilton community can participate in honest conversations about the most pressing issues that are facing our society. We see that as part of our role as a cathedral, that is to promote civic discourse. So thank you very much for allowing us to do what we believe we're called to do. So tonight our focus is on climate breakdown, or I should say the city's response to climate breakdown. Climate breakdown is the term that the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is using these days. We're just delighted to have with us Linda Lukasik and Catherine Winkleman, thank you very much, from the Office of the Climate Change Initiative with the city, is that right? And Linda, this is quite a recent creation. Is it December last year, I think you started? Not quite a year old. So, and you are helping implement some of the climate change initiatives that the city has come up with. I'd love to say a bit more about you, but I don't want to be stealing Jim Newman's thunder. So just thank you both so much for joining us. And we're just delighted to be here and to be finding out a little bit more about what the city is doing to address climate change.
Thank you.
So, Jim, I'm going to hand over to you. I think you're going to say a little bit more about both Linda and Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And good evening, everyone. My name is James Newman, and I am co-chair of Climate Justice Cathedral, the Climate Justice Cathedral Group. And I have the pleasure of formally introducing our speakers. And as you know, on my immediate left is Dr. Linda Lukasik, the director of the city's newly created Office of Climate Change Initiatives. And that is the entity now charged with overseeing and facilitating the implementation in Hamilton of a community-wide climate action strategy. Dr. Linda is a lifelong Hamiltonian, and as the Dean already mentioned, prior to this current posting was the executive director of Environment Hamilton. Excuse me, my eyesight is a little off with a problem. Which is a not-for-profit environmental advocacy and education organization. Dr. Lukasik holds a BSc in biochemistry from McMaster University, a Master of Environmental Studies from Dalhousie, and a PhD in planning from the University of Waterloo. Dr. Catherine Winkleman is Senior Project Manager in the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, and Dr. Winkleman has been working in environmental, sustainability, and climate change fields in the public and private sectors for 15 years. She has experience in both climate change mitigation as well as climate change adaptation, with a focus on energy efficient buildings and flood resiliency. In her current role, she is the lead for the soon to be launched pilot Better Homes Hamilton Residential Energy Efficiency Retrofit Program. She also works on various other projects to implement Hamilton's climate action strategy. We have two highly respected, deeply experienced professional people with us this evening. Aren't we fortunate? Please join me in welcoming them tonight.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me well? Okay, good. So it's really great to have the opportunity to talk to all of you today about Hamilton's climate action strategy. So as you heard, I'm the director of the newly formed office. We now have a team of 4 full-time staff. Catherine is one of our senior project managers. We've got a second senior project manager named Trevor Imhoff, and many of you will recognize that name. Trevor's been with the city working on these issues for a number of years now. And we also have a project manager working with us named Beatrice Akoko, and some of you will recognize that name too from community work. So the team has grown and we're doing our best to make things happen. There we go. Wanted to quickly start tonight with a land acknowledgement. This is something that we always did at the community level and that the city does as well. So just reminding everyone that we are on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. And again, that this land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. And I just want to say I really appreciate the important symbols that exist with that dish with one spoon, that whole idea that there's no knife. So it's all about peaceful, nonviolent interactions and only taking what you need and making sure that the bowl and what's in the bowl is sustained for current and future generations. So lots of really profound messaging there that it's important for us to pay attention to, as we live, work, and play and do the things that we do on these treaty lands. So just quickly in terms of presentation overview, tonight Catherine and I'm gonna start by giving you an overview of Hamilton's climate action strategy, talk a little bit about some of the priority focus areas that our office has had for 2023, and then I'll hand it over to Catherine to share with you. We're very excited. We're on the brink of launching the Better Homes Hamilton pilot project, so she's gonna share that, along with just some general information about retrofit incentives, and we want some time to be able to engage in some discussion and question and answers with you. But we're trying to make sure that we speak to ways that you can do things as well to help to get us to where we need to go when it comes to climate. So I'm just going to start very quickly with a sort of Hamilton's Climate Action Strategy 101. So many of you may be aware, there were many years that led up to this, but in August of 2022, Hamilton City Council approved Hamilton's Climate Action Strategy. And that strategy has within it 2 plans. We have a plan that you can see at the top there called Recharge Hamilton, also known as the Community Energy and Emissions Plan, or CEEP. And that's our climate mitigation plan. So that's the plan that has strategy and actions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, mitigating those effects of the climate crisis. And then we also have a climate change impact adaptation plan. And in that plan, we've got actions really designed to adapt to climate change, because the reality that we all know is we can see and feel it around us. Climate change is already happening. And that adaptation plan is also very important. And I'll speak more about this, but we really emphasize the importance of starting from a place of climate justice in the work that we do. And I always think about the adaptation piece as being almost more important on that front, that we have to constantly be thinking about, all of us, mitigation and adaptation actions and making sure that no one is left behind. And I think that's now more than ever important that we keep on thinking about that within a climate context. I also want to emphasize, and this is something that I'm doing a lot, especially having come from the community side and now sitting within the city, which still feels like a very strange transition for me, this is a community-wide plan. So I keep repeating to people that the city can't do this alone. So there are definitely important actions in both of these plans and in the strategy overall that the city is responsible for, but it's a community-wide plan. So every one of us, to the best of our ability, has to roll up our sleeves and do what we can to play a part. So I'm going to try to wrangle you into taking some action before you leave tonight as well. But I think we need to remember that. So the city and what we're trying to do in the office is to really make the city a leader when it comes to climate action, to lead the way and encourage others, because depending on the actions that we're talking about, the city doesn't always have a direct regulatory or legal mandate to require action, so there are other ways that we need to try to push for change to happen. Okay, and we always like to share this greenhouse gas emission profile for the city. This one is already, we've got to update this slide, but it's still generally the same situation where in Hamilton we've got our top 3 sources of greenhouse gas emissions are industry, transportation, and buildings. And industry is a substantial contributor. So you can just see compared to the others, it almost dwarfs them. So it makes things a little bit unusual and different for us in Hamilton versus other GTHA municipalities. But again, I think the message here is it doesn't mean that those other pieces aren't just as important and things that we need to pay attention to. But within the context of our strategy, it does mean we have to talk about as well, how can we come together collectively as a community and support and nudge and encourage our industrial neighbors in the city to do what they need to do. So that is certainly part of the plan as well. Okay, so again, I would say we need to take collective action to address all of these sources. And I just want to share within each plan, so in our mitigation plan and in our adaptation plan, we have transformations and resilient themes. So these are the low carbon transformations that exist within our mitigation plan. And if you haven't had a look at the plan, I'd really encourage you to do so. You can find both of these plans on the city's website. And we're now in the role that we play at the office in facilitating the implementation of the strategy and overseeing and monitoring progress. We recently brought a report forward, our first annual report to the General Issues Committee, which is all of council. And in that report, we've got an appendix that provides a status update on all of the actions in both the mitigation and the adaptation plans. It's a work in progress. We've got to figure out how to do that in a more rigorous way as time goes on. But that's going to become really important for us as a community to be able to monitor progress and to do it in an open and a transparent and accountable way. So I just want to give you a feel for what kinds of activities fall under each of these transformation areas in the mitigation plan. So under innovating our industry, as I say, we know that that's the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. One important action that we're working to move forward is to establish a Hamilton Regional Decarbonization Hub, with the idea being that we'll bring key stakeholders around the table, and as the municipality, we'll do what we can to leverage partnerships and to encourage and support industry to take the steps that they need to take to decarbonize. And we're seeing some movement. You've probably seen the media coverage around ArcelorMittal Dofasco and that transition towards green steel production. We all need to encourage them to keep moving and move faster if they can. Under transforming our buildings, this is a huge one. We are in the process of developing citywide green development standards, so watch for more details there. And this will give the municipality an ability where it can mandate requirements to do so, but also to incentivize action where maybe they don't have the direct power to mandate. We need to talk about changing how we move around because transportation is a major source. So the plan looks at expanding and connecting active transportation networks, and you'll be aware that we've seen our council commit to accelerating implementation of cycling networks. You know, there's one important example. We also need to pay attention to renewable energy. We know this is going to be a very important piece of our efforts to decarbonize. And so one example of an action under the mitigation plan is to really pursue strategic solar energy installations. And then the final transformation in the mitigation plan is growing green. And there are all kinds of actions there. One that really stands out for me is a commitment to see 50,000 trees per year planted in the city moving into the future. And that's not just the city itself, but collectively as a community. It's a big target, but it's an important one. And it's one that's also focused on, through our now official urban forest strategy, equitable distribution of that greening in our city. Under the adaptation plan, there are 4 theme areas. The first one is the built environment and systems associated with the built environment. And this is all about building in resilience so that we can deal with the impacts that we're already experiencing in our city. So one example of an action there is low impact development guidelines and the implementation of those guidelines. So this is green infrastructure, things like bioswales and other methods that can help to slow stormwater flow. So stay tuned, the city's on the brink of finalizing those guidelines, and you'll hopefully see more action on the ground on that front. People and health is another theme, and an important one. An example there is public health services at the city is working with quite a diverse mix of community stakeholders to develop an extreme heat response strategy and to talk and brainstorm around creative ways to really pay attention to extreme heat and making sure that people are able to cope, and if they aren't, what additional measures do we as a community need to put in place? And then energy and economy, natural environment, agriculture and water, I shouldn't skip that one, is another one. And under this category, there are actions focused on helping people to grow local food, paying attention to farms in our community and ensuring that farmers are, that their farms are climate resilient. That's an important piece. And then under the final theme in the adaptation plan is energy and economy. And one key action there is looking at vulnerability and risk assessments for our local energy systems. And more, I think you're going to hear conversation about that and how important that is for us moving forward. So, as I mentioned, on October 18th, we provided an update report to Council that included a status update. We also provided an update already on our 2023 priority focus areas. So we went to Council in the spring of this year and we said, there's lots to do. We feel like we need to start somewhere. So we picked out some areas where we decided as the office we would focus and do what we could to move these forward. Some of them are pieces that are really kind of laying the groundwork to enable us to do the work that we know we need to do. So you see the first bullet is really focused on that, governance and innovation. But I'll walk through each of these just very quickly, just so you have a sense of some of what's happened under each of these categories. The first one around governance, I just want to make sure I don't miss anything here. Of critical importance for us at the city were some internal governance structures. And these are really aimed at bringing city staff together to talk internally about climate actions that we know the city needs to put in place, and to figure out how to effectively track and report on progress with implementation. Some of that also includes looking at how are we tracking greenhouse gas emission reductions in a formal way within the city. And these are formal spaces where we're also anticipating we'll have important conversations around learning, collaborating, supporting, innovating, and ideally accelerating action. I think if anything, it's any of you who are following the global conversations about climate, the message is clear that we're not moving fast enough. We need to accelerate action, and I can tell you that those conversations are starting to happen internally. So as of today, we now have a Climate Change Initiative Steering Committee in the city, which has been meeting since September, and that's made up of more senior staff directors from across relevant divisions and departments. And that group is now putting its mind to putting together an extended leadership group, which would be a broader group of people involved in implementing climate-related actions at the city. And then I can also tell you we've got an important external governance structure, and that's the Community Climate Change Advisory Committee. We're almost there for any of you who've been following that one. There was an opportunity June into July for community members to apply. We're into the final stretch, and we're hopeful that we'll see the process unfold to select those committee members and appoint them to the committee. And ideally, we'll have that committee meeting early 2024. And I just want to say in the case of that committee, there was a lot of thought put into the terms of reference, with the idea being that we wanted a diverse representation around that community table. So there are seats at the table for Indigenous representatives. There are seats at the table for people who are being impacted maybe unequally from the climate crisis. We want to make sure we've got gender parity around that table. So lots of focus on how do we make that a place where there are diverse perspectives and the conversations that need to happen will happen. And that committee is going to play a role in tracking the city's progress, but also really helping us in tracking community-wide. Because as I say, the climate action strategy is community-wide, and we're going to need help as the city and city staff in figuring out how we're going to effectively monitor what's happening in the community. I just want to add too, and this is where this slide comes in, these structures are also there to help with climate innovation. So we now have in the city a climate change reserve. And it actually existed, I think it was established in 2019, but we're now actually supporting projects through that fund. And as part of the 2023 budget, a sustainable source of funding was confirmed for that reserve. So in 2023, we really wanted to make sure that we got moving with some city-led projects supported through the Climate Change Reserve. So when we went before General Issues Committee in October of this year, we presented a list of projects and recommended that they be approved by council through the Climate Change Reserve. And so you may have read some media, there's a little bit of controversy and discussion in the community about some of them. But these are projects that are moving forward, and they include an e-bike pilot for the city to help with mobility justice and hopefully encourage more people to make more climate-friendly choices for moving around. There's a municipal parking lot greening climate adaptation project. This one will help. We have these conversations internally about the idea of dream parking lots, taking those spaces that we think of as, asphalt wasteland and repurposing them over time so that they become, a place where you might sit on a bench under a tree, or, you can park your bike there at a secure bike parking facility, or get a car share car, or plug your EV in. So we're trying to figure out how do we transition these spaces so that they're supporting climate action. There's support for enhanced and expand secure bike parking facilities because people aren't going to ride if they don't have a safe place to park. There's a depaving pilot project that will look at an area of the city that needs greening, and the city will lead efforts to make that happen. There's a fire truck anti-idling technology project that'll make the work environment healthier for firefighters, where it's already challenging enough when you're responding to a fire, but to help to reduce idling, and in so doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As the fire department continues to figure out how do they transition ideally towards all electric pumpers and other heavy fire vehicles, and that process is starting to concurrently as the projects like this move forward. And then the last project that was supported, and this one actually was approved prior to the 18th, this one had to move ahead in a Public Works Committee. It's really just to enhance electrical capacity to enable the city to install EV chargers. So we're getting more and more electric vehicles, in all departments and divisions across the city, right from lighter vehicles to heavier ones, and we need that infrastructure to support that shift. One of the other priorities for us was to start work on carbon budgeting. And so that work has been initiated internally. We're in the early days. We've got a working group, and there's a scope of work that's been mapped out. We'll be putting an RFP out because we do need to bring in outside experts just to help us to get the framework built, and then we'll ultimately take it from there on the implementation side. But for anyone who's not familiar with carbon budgeting, I think this quote helps. Municipal carbon budgeting scales international science-based targets down to a community level to show what that community's climate budget is, the scale of action needed to achieve reduction targets, and the progress the community is making towards its greenhouse gas reduction target. So what we're going to see over time is the City of Hamilton embracing a carbon budget to guide decision-making at budget time, and to make those considerations around, we've done that calculation from a global perspective, what's our fair share as this community, and how do we need to ratchet that down over time to ultimately work towards net zero. So it's going to be a very important way to track and to show accountability, and to hopefully give the community a way to hold the city's feet to the fire if we're not doing what needs to happen on this front. So that's an important piece, and you'll be hearing more and more about that into 2024. Another priority for us this year is green buildings. I'm not going to talk about the home energy retrofit, the Better Homes Hamilton program. Catherine's going to share those details. But we've also got a commitment, and our office is leading the way on this piece for the city itself to adopt an energy performance net zero standard for all new municipal buildings. And again, that's our way to show leadership, because at this point in time, the city itself can't mandate the private sector to do that. But if we start walking the talk, we know it'll be easier to encourage others to do the same for good reasons. So stay tuned for that. And then urban greening is also another important piece. So I talked about the 50,000 trees, but through the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, we're also leveraging partnerships, with other divisions in the city, but also in the community to help to make more happen in the way of greening. So for instance, next year there'll be 5,000 trees given out through the city's free tree program, and we've been working with forestry to help them make connections with community to make that program more impactful. And that work will continue as well. Because that greening piece is incredibly important from a climate mitigation point of view, but from an adaptation point of view as well, because we know, for instance, more trees in the urban core, if we can achieve that 40% canopy cover, that'll go a long way to mitigating those urban heat island effects that can be so problematic for us in the city. So I wanted to, before I hand over to Catherine, just stop here, and sorry, this is a bit of a mishmash of a slide, but I know tonight that part of the messaging that the Cathedral has put out there is that idea of thinking about what we can all do right here at home to help. So I've thrown a bunch of possibilities up here, and I hope that'll get you thinking, and be looking forward to, in the Q&A, having more conversation. So these are just some examples, everything from good old-fashioned hanging your clothes out on the clothesline to disconnecting your downspout and helping with reducing those extreme weather flows, to, hey, air source heat pump as an option instead of a fossil fuel powered heating cooling system, or up in the far corner there, those are acorns from a bur oak tree. So thinking about what you can do hands-on to germinate local trees and plants and help to green up the city. So lots of possibilities that I think we can talk about, big and small, that all in a cumulative way can really make a big difference. So I'm going to stop here and hand it over to Catherine.
Thank you, Linda. Well, let's see. Yeah. So I'm excited to talk to you now about our imminently launching Better Homes Hamilton program. And before I get into the details of the program, I was just curious to know, has anyone here already heard about this program? And the reason I'm asking is because there was a little bit of advertising around it. Yes? Okay. If it's a rebate, then it wouldn't be our program, but I'm curious to know, or I would be curious to know who would have, did they actually knock on your door? Oh, really? That's interesting. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. I would maybe be a little wary of that, but okay. So no one else here might have heard of it already. Okay, well, so good that I'm here so that I can tell you all about it. So the Better Homes Hamilton program is essentially a pilot residential energy efficiency retrofit program. It's a loan program, and it's intended to provide access to low interest, or in the case of the pilot program, zero interest loans that serves as capital for households to be able to complete home energy efficiency retrofits, right? And so the loan itself is up to $20,000, and as mentioned, for the pilot program, it's zero interest, so no interest on the loan. And the repayment period of the loan is between 10 and 15 years. And what's special about, and there are many actually special things about this program, but one of the special things about this program is that the loan is actually placed on the property itself through something called a local improvement charge. So it's not attached to the homeowner, it's actually attached to the property itself. And it is essentially, it's a special charge that gets put on the tax bill, and it just gets paid at the same time and the same way that you pay your tax bill. And what's excellent about this type of loan is also, if you move and you haven't paid off the loan just yet, the loan stays with the property. You don't have to keep paying it. Rather, the new owner or the buyer of your home would then continue to pay off the loan until it is paid back in full. So one of the great things, or another one of the great things about this loan program is that it allows households that might not be able to access more traditional means of financing through different financial institutions. This is a way for them to be able to access financing when in other cases they might not necessarily be able to, or at least easily. So we are hoping to launch this program in the next few weeks. We're shooting for December 1st. A few more things have to fall into place for that to actually happen, but it will definitely be before the end of the year. But I'm quite certain we'll be able to launch on December 1st. So we're super excited about that. And I'm just so happy that you're here and can hear all about it. And I hope that what we talk about tonight will interest you to really check it out and see how you can tap into this loan program to be able to take action for your household. Okay. Alrighty, I think this is the next slide. So important for us is for the public to understand some of the guiding principles that are behind the design of this program. And the idea, one of the big ideas behind the loan program is to be able to support as many homeowners as possible in order to be able to reduce, to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We wanted, by the design of the program, to be able to reduce barriers to entry into being able to do retrofits through this competitive and transparent financing model. And the program also provides support, so to speak, concierge services through me. I am I guess the face of the Better Homes Hamilton program, and I am the program coach. And so I will be working with applicants and participants, helping, walking them through the process and answering questions and going through paperwork with them and whatever questions they may have with regard to the process of applying, because it is a rather complex program. Our loan program is complex, but the landscape of home retrofits, energy retrofits itself is a very complex and complicated landscape. So I'll be there to help all participants through that journey, and also helping them understand how to stack our loan with incentives and other resources that they may be able to implement in their retrofit journeys. And Linda had mentioned the transformation, the different transformation themes in the mitigation plan, and so this program is directly links to low carbon transformation number 2, so transforming our buildings as part of the Hamilton Climate Action Strategy. And finally, again, circling back to what Linda had mentioned about equity and climate justice, we're applying this climate justice lens to the program to ensure equitable opportunity and participation in the community. So that is a very important guiding principle for us also. So in terms of program eligibility, well, first of all, you have to live in the city of Hamilton, right? And this is a home energy efficiency retrofit program. And so it's residential buildings, specifically detached houses. Semi-detached houses and townhomes are eligible to participate, or the homeowners of these types of properties are eligible to participate. All of the owners on the title have to consent to participation in the program, and that's very important. We just want to make sure that it's potentially a big commitment, a $20,000 loan. So anybody who is registered on the title has need a signature that everyone consents. You have to have a property tax account with the city, and your property taxes have to be in good standing. And finally, it's really important to underscore that you can't already have started the retrofit work for which you are seeking a loan. And we've heard from other programs, other municipalities that are running a similar type of local improvement charge, residential energy efficiency retrofit program, that a number of applicants that have tried to get the loan already started some work. They got a heat pump last year, and now they're trying to retroactively get funding back for it, and so to help them pay off their, I don't know, line of credit or however it is they may have bought it. But that is not allowed in this program. You can't have started any of the work yet. You first have to apply, you have to be approved, and we will have a matrix of various selection criteria, it's not a first come, first serve type of program. So that's also very important to know. But we will go through the selection criteria. There will be, a group that will assess all of the applicants, and 50 applicants will be eligible for the pilot program. Because it's a pilot, it's only 50, so it's a small number, but it's important for us to be able to get as wide a geographic distribution throughout the city as possible, with many different housing types, because it is a pilot project, so we'd like to learn, okay, in terms of energy efficiency and emissions reductions through this program, what types of houses will give the greatest, render the greatest reduction in emissions, and for whom might this program be most what are the best housing types or house types for this type of program? Alrighty, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's about it for program eligibility. And of course, we're looking also at, in terms of the selection criteria, I went a little off script here, but in terms of selection criteria, going back to the climate justice lens, we are going to also be putting some additional marketing focus on those areas of the city that have historically had higher levels of energy burden, right? So older homes in particular areas where it may be more difficult for households on their own to do these energy efficiency retrofits. So we will be putting a little bit extra focus in terms of marketing in those areas. So you're probably dying to know, what is it that I can do with this loan? Am I right? I hope. In any case. Well, our program is actually a little bit more focused than a number of other municipal programs like this, because the retrofits that were chosen for this program were really chosen because they essentially give you the best GHG reduction bang for the buck. And so the three most important of these is retrofits and measures to your building envelope. So air sealing and draft proofing, as well as insulation in your basement, your attic, and your exterior, the walls of the house. Probably the single biggest in terms of GHG reductions, bang for your buck, measure is through mechanical systems, that specifically being air source heat pumps, right? And so whether they're just your traditional air source heat pumps, cold air source heat pumps, mini splits, and hybrid systems where you still have a high efficiency gas furnace as a backup, or when it gets quite cold out, but you primarily would like to be able to use an air source heat pump. So in this hybrid system, those types of air source heat pumps are also eligible. And then finally, for mechanical systems, smart thermostats and controllers are also eligible. And sometimes you need some supporting infrastructure upgrades in order to be able to install an air source heat pump. So you may need to upgrade your electrical panel. So that is also an eligible retrofit. I mean, and upgrading the electrical panel also for future EV that would be included under that too. And then finally, ductwork that might be required for an air source heat pump, installation of a new air source heat pump. Oh. Yeah, thank you. There's a fourth category of eligible measures, and this refers to energy assessments, or energy audits, home energy audits, which are eligible in our program, but are only optional. Unlike many other programs, and like surely the program that you were mentioning before that someone was advertising to you, chances are you have to have an energy audit to participate in that program, because you do for most programs. For the Better Homes Hamilton program, you don't have to get an energy audit. It is not a requirement. However, we strongly recommend people to do it. And our guess is also that most people who would be applying for the Better Homes Hamilton program, the loan program, will also be interested in taking advantage of and stacking our loan with various rebate and incentive programs that always require an energy audit. So if you're going to do some of the other rebates, which I'm going to talk about shortly, you have to do the energy audit, and therefore, our loan would also help pay for the cost of the pre and the post retrofit audit. And then finally, if applicable, building permits for your retrofits. Yeah, so I put a link there. If anybody, and I have a number of links that I'm going to have on slides, so if anybody's interested in the actual links, I'm more than happy to share with you a digital copy so you can actually just click on hyperlinks. So with regard to some of those incentive programs, I've broken them down into two different categories. You could sort of chop them and dice them in a number of different ways, but I'm just going to talk about two categories tonight. One of them being income-based programs, and the other programs that are not income-based. So again, the Better Homes Hamilton loan program, which is not an incentive or rebate program, it's only a loan program. It is not income-based. It is not geared to income, so I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that that's clear. There are other programs, however, that are income-based. And there's one, for example, or actually two, I think, through Enbridge Gas, where, they're income qualifying, income-based programs, and in at least one of the Enbridge Gas programs, you have to be participating in a government assistance program, and really, some of their programs are really they're very good. You get free installation and draft proofing and a smart thermostat, and in some of them you get free appliances. I think that might be the electric, like Hydro One and Electra. But there might even be, I think there's, the oil to heat pump affordability program. I think with that one you actually could get you could possibly be eligible for a free air source heat pump. But you have to have oil and be converting to a heat source pump. But so there are different programs. Most of them are utility-based, but they're really quite good. So for income-based programs, there are more than this out there, but these are probably the most popular ones. And of course, they could change at any time. These are the ones that are currently existing. And so the last category, or the second category that I'll talk about, is the non-income-based programs. And I believe maybe was it the Canada Greener Homes initiative that you might have heard about? So I'm not going to get to too many details about this because there were some changes in the program itself. It was a grant program, now it's only a loan program, and the grant portion of it has been actually passed on, ironic as it is, to Enbridge Gas as part of the Home Efficiency Rebate Plus program. But the Canada Greener Homes Initiative, the loan program, does still exist, and it's a 10-year interest-free loan, but you have to qualify for it. Like, you have to, they'll do credit checks, and it's, you know, it's unlike our program. It's not as, there are different criteria, let's put it that way. But that is an incentive program that does exist. And I'm calling it an incentive program because it is often used together with the Home Efficiency Rebate Plus program, which is also known as the HER Plus program. And then Enbridge also has a program for smart thermostats. But really, the HER Plus program is probably the sort of star rebate program in the province of Ontario. Actually, I'm going to... Am I too slow, too fast sometimes? I was going to go, I think I have a slide. I have them out of order. Yeah, this is the one that I wanted to go to. Thank you. This is just a graphic that shows you some of the rebates that are available through the HER Plus program. So you can get, whereas in our program with the loan, you can use the loan to pay for the home energy assessment. In the HER Plus program, you can get up to $600 towards the home assessment, and then if you were to stack that with the Better Homes Hamilton loan, the loan would pay the difference between the two. I mean, of course, you have to pay back that difference, but by stacking them, you can take advantage, kill two birds with one stone, right? So air sealing, you can get back up to $1,300. Space and water heating, which also includes the air source heat pumps, is up to $7,800. Solar panels, which is not a part of our program, I'm going to say yet, because we do hope that our program will scale up and include down the line more retrofits and more options and renewables. So insulation is, like ours, is also a part of this one. Windows and doors are not a part of our program, but they are HER Plus. And yeah, the smart thermostats and weatherproofing they're also part of ours. Can we go back to the last slide? Sorry. Yeah, so this is, I just wanted to point out some resources. And again, as I said, I'd be very happy to give you a copy of this so that you have hyperlinks that you can click to access some of these resources. But really, if you want to learn more about home assessments and energy audits, the EnerGuide Energy Efficiency Home Evaluations webpage from NRCan is chock full of information. Keeping in the heat, this is a pamphlet, or actually it's quite a large and sometimes quite technical booklet, but there have been multiple iterations over the years that they keep updating over time. And NRCan air source heat pump website. Again, as mentioned, the utilities are very actively involved in the rebates and incentives, but also in resources for things that you can do yourself around the house, some of them for very, very little money. So that brings me to our imminent launch. The website, our official website is not up yet and running yet, but we do have the pre-launch website under Engage Hamilton. And I would highly, if what you heard today about the Better Homes Hamilton program excites you and you want to learn more about it, I really encourage you to go to the Engage Hamilton website and sign up for the pre-launch. Your name will, just enter your name and you'll be the first to know when we actually open the application window. Alternately, you can just tell me. I can take down your name and put you on the list and make sure that you get the information as soon as the application window opens. So, and there's my information in case you have any questions that you think of after tonight and would just like to be in touch to ask. So, thank you.
So thank you very much to Linda and to Catherine so much. I'm Monica Green. I'm the assistant curate here at the Cathedral. Just on behalf of Climate Justice Cathedral, at the committee and the whole Cathedral, thank you so much for coming and opening this up. This really important topic for us and making it so practical and giving us so many great things to think about and to do and to encourage our community to get engaged in. Now it's time for let's give him a round of applause one more time. Just as a thank you, we have some flowers for you guys.
My goodness.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. That's so nice.
Thank you.
Now it's time for some Q&A. I've got some questions already from the chat, so if you are online and have some questions, I will be able to ask those as well. But do we have any questions from the audience to start? Back here. Let's go to the back.
Yeah, this question is for Linda. I'm thrilled about 50,000 trees being planted every year. What's being done to discourage the tree cutting that's happening?
That is a very good question, and I'm happy that I have a hopeful response for you. So you may well be aware already that the city now has an urban forest strategy. Yeah, so that was approved by council, May or June of this year. And it has an ambitious target, 40% canopy cover, which again, we know we need to achieve to tackle the urban heat island effect. There was also reference there to the need to start to explore a private tree protection bylaw. So there are efforts, efforts have begun internally. So that's another one where I would say stay tuned. You're going to see eventually some community conversations and movement towards the establishment of a private tree protection bylaw for the city of Hamilton, acknowledging that reality that up until now, and it varied, pre-amalgamation varied depending on which lower tier municipality you were living in, there wasn't even protection. So in the old city of Hamilton, for instance, there were no protections for private trees. And we're shifting in a direction where we're acknowledging that we need to protect all of those trees. So fingers crossed, I'm really hopeful we're going to see a solid plan that's really going to help us on that front moving forward. So that as we all work collectively to plant more trees, those trees will be more protected into the future. Yeah, so I hope that answered, and stay tuned. I would encourage you to keep watching for next steps on that.
We've got two follow-up questions on that. Mine is a personal question. Are the trees that we're planting, are they native trees? Is that an incentive to do native planting?
Yes, so I can tell you on the city side, for instance, the 5,000 tree giveaway, forestry has committed to making sure those are all native trees. I can't say for sure that 100% of the trees that are being planted on city, the forestry within the city is definitely transitioning in that direction to getting more native trees planted. And before you all go tonight, we've gotten into the habit of giving people an opportunity if they're willing to take away seeds. So you can put your hand to trying to germinate both native plants and trees. So I have right up front, I've got some native tree seeds and germination instructions. So if any of you are willing to give that a try, we're encouraging individuals to do that. Start getting those native tree seedlings going, plant them on your own property if you've got some place to plant, or give them away to family and friends to help with that kind of daunting 50,000 tree a year goal.
Linda, the diocese is joining the Anglican communion around the world in something called the Communion Forest. And so we've just committed to, it's a year anniversary right now since that project initiative began in Lambeth. And so we've officially launched our own initiative here. We have a student that's going to be coming on to help us and so on. And we're partnering with Neighborwoods, doing tree inventories and so on. How do we get your trees That's what I want to know. We're going to be looking for trees, right? To do, will all those trees you mentioned be the kind of thing that a community could approach the city and say, look, we have a property and we need a certain number of trees. And I'll hand the mic right back. I just want to say that the first thing before we do any planting is about protection and about restoration, then planting. So the emphasis has been on a different syllable in order to make sure that we're not just taking seeds and thinking that that's the key thing, but that there's these other steps are important.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and we should keep on talking because there's definitely an acknowledgement that getting trees planted on private property is critically important. So, for instance, in a typical urban area, 60% of that urban forest canopy cover comes from trees on private property. So I think we all know that there needs to be that push and there need to be supports so that when there is an entity with property that they want to plant, we need to be figuring out, through government too, how do we creatively support making that happen? So yeah, we need to keep on talking. And I was going to say, as people are planting trees, our office, I made this commitment, maybe others are going to be mad at me for this, but we agreed to try to figure out for 2024 how to track, not just, forestry keeps tabs on how many trees they have to take down if they're unsafe or how much they're planting. We're going to do our best to start to track the community trees, right? So we're going to want to know from people when you are doing planting on properties, so we can add that to that tally of the 50,000, and hopefully we'll hit the target we're trying to reach. Yeah.
I did just want to say that the free trees from the city of Hamilton, they are all native.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Linda, quite a few of us are campaigning to try and eliminate gas from home heating, and that's one of the main drivers of air source heat pumps, obviously. Many companies marketing this are still saying you need a gas furnace for backup. This is not true. Electrical element heating can be installed in the heat pump so that if it gets too low, you will get some resistive heating. You do not need a backup gas furnace. It rather undermines the whole program if you have that backup gas furnace. And just continuing the campaign on talking about Enbridge, some of the Enbridge programs are only for people who are already Enbridge gas customers. So if you're not a gas customer, you may not qualify for some of the grants that then, not the Greener Homes grant, but some of the other ones. So you do need to be aware that it's for gas customers.
That is true. Yes, you are correct.
My wife wants to make a comment on a different topic.
Love to ask this question in the cathedral. Better churches, can we have, is a thought that we might have loans? There are a lot of enormous churches in Hamilton. I work with zero emission churches. We are collecting greenhouse gas emissions from the churches in Hamilton and in fact the whole of the diocese. And alone would be wonderful because often a church cannot afford to put in air source heat pumps, but it's something that many of them would love to do. And I know how much the cathedrals cost, so I've seen last year's bills.
Future phase.
Yes, perhaps. Yeah, perhaps that is a future phase. One of the I did want to just quickly use that opportunity to mention something that I didn't necessarily during when I was speaking, and that is the importance of sort of a building envelope first approach, where you really need to, air seal and insulate your building as well as possible before you get an air source heat pump. We're not requiring that, but if you were doing an energy audit, you would need to essentially pretty much need to do that, and really it is a best practice to do that. So I didn't get into that, but how do you know what I mean? Like air sealing a cathedral that was built, what did I hear? 1875. But in any case. All buildings, we're going to have to retrofit all buildings at some point, right? So we need to be thinking about buildings like cathedrals and other institutions too.
And from that, there's a not quite a question from the chat, but a comment. Hopefully all new builds, industrial, retail, and residential in the city of Hamilton have to have heat pumps and have the highest insulation recommended? Question mark?
Do you want me to start? You want to jump into that? So, that's currently not the case, and it's an interesting challenge for us. And so one thing that I am going to say is that we need to be paying attention to that, I would say, as residents of the city, but also as residents of the province, because you know, there a lot of the push in the direction of climate resilient buildings it falls under the Ontario Building Code and what that looks like. And the way that the system is set up, you can have a national model building code with direction for provinces and territories to adopt that, but it becomes the ability of each province and territory to figure out how to move forward. So some of you may be hearing about places like Vancouver, where with new buildings they're already banning, you know, natural gas, fossil gas hookup. As far as we understand in Ontario, municipalities can't do that because of the way the building code here looks right now. So that's my little quiet, you know, if you want to do some provincial level advocating, I think that's going to be an important piece for all of us to be thinking about, but also paying attention to, you know, I mentioned that we're pursuing green development standards in Hamilton. There are ways you can structure those, and Toronto is a good example. They've done this for a while, where for everything that the municipality can mandate in the way of putting up buildings that are more climate resilient, they're doing that. But they're incentivizing other things that maybe they don't have the power to mandate yet. So it's a sort of a stick and a carrot approach to help to move the marker forward, you know, as we wait and advocate for the province to get with the program.
I'm just going to say one of the frustrating things about trying to save Hamilton's trees is that when you drive by a construction site and you see the trees completely removed when they don't have to be. I'm talking about trees that are along the road, and sometimes I see trees in between the sidewalk and the road just cut off, and that is obviously trees on Hamilton's property, not the developer's property. So I took Google print of 2 intersections where the trees have been completely removed. I'm going to leave with you because it has the intersections marked on here. And just as a reminder that maybe we've got to talk to developers and say, you're not allowed to remove these trees unless you negotiate it with us before you do so.
Yeah, I would love to see those pictures, and I can tell you, I'm hopeful too that as we move forward with implementation of the urban forest strategy, we're going to see changes on the ground in terms of how we're viewing and treating our trees moving forward. I think there's still additional pieces that need to be in place, you know, for sure for private trees and protection of those trees, but probably too in terms of how we're dealing with our public trees. You know, I'll give you one example, and I know we often heard this from people and saw it over the years, you know, when I was on the community side doing tree work, just concerns around trees getting planted, and then are they being watered, are they being properly cared for? So we're really seeing a refocusing through forestry on, well, it doesn't make sense for us to put money and time and resources into planting trees if we're not making sure, especially in those first 2 years as they're getting established, that we're taking care of them. So you're seeing a sort of an internal revamping of, you know, how are we approaching this and how are we making sure that over time we're making this better and better and better, because we know we need to. Yeah. So fingers crossed, I'm hopeful. But I think whenever you see issues, I think it's always worth sharing, because we can certainly pass it along internally and make sure that others are aware that the public is concerned.
A question from the chat. What level of cooperation and involvement have industrial businesses given the city's climate change initiatives program?
Yeah. So I'll start. I think, I'm going to say, I think it's fair to say it's early days. But, you know, I have had experiences where businesses that are already established and operate in our community have reached out to the city proactively to say, we're aware that there's a climate action strategy. we've also, you know, some of these are, you know, they're like national, multinational corporations that have operations here. They're reaching out and saying, we've done some planning too. We want to share it with you. We want to have a conversation. We want to figure out how we can do more for our operations in this location. So those kinds of things are happening. I think a lot more work, I think fair to say, you know, just like it's overwhelming to think about what Catherine was talking about, the need to retrofit pretty much every building that exists in this community. I think there's still lots more work to be done when we talk about especially industry and decarbonization. And things like the hub that I talked about, that hub has not been, it's not established and functioning yet. So I think once we get pieces like that in place in the city where we don't have the mandate to say to industry, thou shalt not emit greenhouse gases, we'll have a way and some leverage through stakeholder conversations to push. So early days, but I can tell you there definitely are businesses proactively and industries proactively reaching out and wanting to do good things.
Another question here? Yeah.
I live across from a hydro corridor, and I hate to see it being mown every week or every 10 days. No trees.
Yeah.
Or meadows.
Yes.
Pollinator gardens.
Yeah. And I just, does Hydro own that land, or does Hamilton? Because I see both coming to cut the grass. Okay. Both the city of Hamilton does the edges, and then the Hydro people come and do the middle, which is obscene. No, they don't. The hydro lines are way up there. That's why they don't plant them. They don't want trees underneath their hydro line. Not all trees are huge, and those hydro lines are really high. I'm not disputing it, but that's hydro's position.
Yeah, their hydro corridor maintenance program is very aggressive, and you've probably seen some of the on-the-ground evidence of that in recent years. I know, you know, Hamilton Beach and along Red Hill. I've seen what you're talking about, and I know that there has been community concern. So they take a very aggressive approach, I think partly so that they don't have to keep coming back and maintaining this as often. And yeah, you think, oh, you know, maybe there are more progressive ways we could approach this. There are wonderful examples. I mean, and you probably are aware of the one in Toronto, where it's like a meadowway that's been created within the hydro corridor. So maybe that's something that we need to collectively keep on talking about. How could we be repurposing those spaces? I mean, Hamilton there's a draft biodiversity action plan out there. We know that, you know, we're paying attention to the climate crisis, but biodiversity is very interconnected there too. So I could see, you know, this community knows how to roll its sleeves up and come together and get things done. And I'm going to say the Hamilton Naturalist Club, Jen Baker, who you may know from the HNC, I know Jen's talked about corridors and the idea of, you know, figuring out how we could make something like a meadowway happen. So maybe we just need to keep on talking, figuring out what that needs to look like and bringing all the right people together.
And I have a second question. Does the municipality have any power to stop large homes? It really upsets me to see the size of some of the homes being built.
Yeah. I'm going to say we don't. I know it's interesting, there are some cities in the US where this has happened, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, Portland, Oregon has gone in that direction, where they've capped the size of housing. I've thought about that a lot. You think about contexts like Niagara Escarpment lands, and, you know, we've had some interesting cases with very large properties being built in spaces like that. And I know that, you know, there's been dialogue at the community level about, well, why aren't there policies that limit size? I mean, it's a very good question, and for sure, other jurisdictions have gone down that pathway in urban settings, recognizing that, you know, if we want to build more compact, complete communities, then that's a piece you need to be thinking about too. So that's an interesting it's an interesting one from a planning point of view. And as I say, there have been, well, Portland is one example where I know they've done exactly that.
Would it be possible for, I don't know whether this is possible or not, but could you create a page somewhere on a website that would list problem areas like we're hearing from tonight, where people could be encouraged to advocate to the city or to their councillors or wherever to get some action that would make your job a little easier?
Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion. Almost like, you know, we're sort of working through, one thing I forgot to mention is that within our office, we're working on a climate change communication strategy for both internal and external. And we're really thinking about how do we enhance the web-based presence for our work. And we're trying to think about creative ways. That might be a neat thing to think about, you know, a way that community members could share. Here's a concern I have, you know, there's a climate angle. I wish this would happen, because there may also be ways that we could, you know, help to facilitate connecting you with somebody else, whether it's us directly or another organization in the community, to move on positive action to address the problem. So we'll take that back, see what others on the team think, yeah.
A question from the chat. I know that the bike lanes get used, but what about designated bus lanes so that the buses move more efficiently, and better bus shelters are needed for riders who wait for buses in all weather?
Yes, we tried. If some of you will know, the city a few years back attempted a bus lane. I think it's worth continuing to try. There are some short segments of bus-only lanes. Some of you may have seen them on Main Street. We've got them, and they're painted a sort of almost like a maroony red color to help to facilitate that flow of buses. And as well, the other thing that's interesting, and I didn't really tune into it till somebody at the city pointed it out to me, at a lot of those major intersections along some of those lower city routes, buses have priority at some of the street lights. So you see those kinds of measures being put in place. Feels like we need more of that. So that it becomes, transit becomes more and more of an attractive choice. Yeah. So I think more still to come. HSR is doing their re-envision project, so I don't know if any of you have delved into the sort of reconfiguring of routes. They're trying to make them more efficient and ensure that we have routes, we have good bus service on routes where they know that there's demand for service and that kind of thing. But I think all of those pieces are going to be important more and more as we move forward. And hopefully the strike gets resolved quickly.
Good evening, and thank you very kindly. So if it's permitted, would just like to mention a couple of little FYIs regarding my own environmental contributions over many years, and then 2 questions. Is that acceptable? Oh, okay. Well, it was going to be very quick, just mentioning. Walked here this evening from the Dundurn Castle area. Nice. That's a very small little thing. We'll be walking home as well, most likely. And throughout my life, for 31 years in fact, was completely vegetarian until my health physically took a nosedive significantly. And also for the first 4 decades of my existence, there was no car. It was walking or the bus. Could never hold my balance on a bicycle adequately. And let me tell you something, when it's all kinds of weather in suburbia and taking big heavy groceries alone on a bus, it's miserable, it's not cool. Anyhow, so right to the questions. Thanks. So if you could possibly clear up the ambiguity, when you mention carbon, and a lot of environmentalists mention carbon, are you referring specifically to carbon dioxide or simply carbon? Because the 2 entities, as I'm sure you're well aware, are quite different. So what is being referred to specifically?
Yeah, so we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions. So there's methane, there are other forms as well, carbon dioxide.
So it's carbon dioxide.
It's human-generated emissions that are contributing to
Okay, it's just that it's only referred to as carbon rather than carbon dioxide, or by its scientific abbreviation, so wasn't too sure. Yeah. Last question quickly. Is Hamilton slated to be on an ongoing trajectory towards 15-minute cities and the Agenda 2030 plan?
Yeah, so I know that the 15-minute city concept, the complete communities, is certainly something that it has been talked about in Hamilton and planned for, with that recognition that, you know, as our community grows, we know from lessons learned in past approaches to development, which has included outward expansion, so suburban sprawl onto prime agricultural land, that we need to head in a different direction. So yes, that's certainly part of what we're trying to achieve in this community, to make a place that has a really good quality of life, because we're paying attention to issues like, you know, those greenhouse gas emissions, the challenges with trying to live in a community where things are not close together. So making that shift, yes, is an important part of building in that climate resilience and making sure we leave no one behind. Yeah.
Hi, I'm curious about the, specifically pertaining to Better Homes Hamilton. It seems safe to say that everyone in the room here is probably aligned in mission with the Office of the Climate Change Initiative. For those individuals that you'd be reaching out to as part of this program for whom climate action might not be their largest priority for accepting you know, a Better Homes loan, for instance, I'm curious if we know what messaging resonates here outside of climate action in and of itself. Not that that shouldn't be enough.
Yeah.
I think probably the primary messaging would be that implementing these retrofits means a more comfortable home for you. It could potentially also be healthier, but certainly more comfortable. We hesitate to say save money, because there are a lot of factors that go into that. But there's a pretty good chance that if you do buy an air source heat pump and do the proper air sealing and insulation, that it will, I mean, certainly over time, it will save you money, but the payback will probably be faster than we might have originally expected. And I believe, I don't know, I think there was a report or some article that came out just this past week or last week about, in fact, I mean, I might want to start thinking a little bit more about actually plugging potential money, you know, financial savings by fuel switching. I mean, that of course also depends on the cost of fuel, right? The different costs. Like, as electricity gets more expensive, and if you have, you know, when we electrify everything, that cost might be going up. But so there are a lot of, and then there's the carbon taxes, and, you know, so it really, there are a lot of factors that go into the money saving aspect. So I hesitate and stay away from that messaging. So really the louder message is you'll live more comfortably and potentially healthier. Right? So.
Question from the chat: how close are we to having more native plants in the small gardens in the middle of boulevards and in intersections, as well as in city parks?
Good question, and I'm going to be honest in saying I don't know the answer, but I do know, I mean, over time there certainly have been efforts, community-driven efforts, that have resulted in, I can tell you with confidence that we definitely have more pollinator gardens in city parks now than we would have had 10 years ago. And a lot of that is through grassroots organizations partnering with the city and community to make that kind of thing happen. And I think just generally the city is looking more and more at how do we help to create more native habitat through native trees and plants. And I think what you're going to see as well is, and it's happening already, you know, more, the city being more sensitive to people who have made that decision to naturalize their own property and to recognize the value of that, and making sure that we don't have, you know, problematic situations with bylaw enforcement, maybe in contexts where it's not appropriate for that to happen. So all of these pieces, I think, have helped over time to make more of that happen. But I would say no doubt we probably need to do more over time.
Yeah, so as I had mentioned, this program just briefly said that they were going to give me a new thermostat, smart thermostat, a new panel they said I needed. They were going to give me a new furnace and heat pump exchanger, obviously gas, a new upgraded gas furnace. My furnace must be from '93. And they said that my rebate would be about $7,000, and that a lot of people just put that against the amount of money that was owed, and that it would be worked into my heat bill. Wasn't sure if I was going to end up paying more or not, but I'd be paying for about 20 years or something. I think that's the way it went. Meanwhile, I was thinking about it. I don't know what a heat pump exchanger is. Might want to quickly tell me what that is. And there's a lot of electric waste too when you think about all the cities with all this electrical lights on. That's another place for savings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is an interesting question. Can you describe really quickly why a heat pump is important?
I didn't hear everything that you said, or so just to answer that general question, and based on what I did hear you say, well, I mean, it is fuel switching, right? So it is, and ideally it's clean electric energy, right? So we need to change to electric air source heat pumps powered by clean energy in order to help us get to net zero, right? Like at this point, there's no other really, that's the way that we'll have to do it, right? And then coupled with renewable energy to get to the net zero. And air conditioning, yes. Okay. Okay, yeah, so, yeah, no, a gas furnace, yeah, it's, yes.
And obviously it draws a lot of electricity, that's why he said I need a new upgraded panel. My panel wouldn't support.
And that could be, that could be.
I was just going to say too, I'm glad that you mentioned energy conservation, because you're right, we don't talk about that enough. You think about, I grew up in the 70s. We talked about, there was an energy crisis. We talked about energy conservation all the time. We need to be doing that now, because the reality is we waste a lot of energy, and we can't have a mentality of moving forward as communities and just trying to generate, climate resilient forms of energy to replace the amount we're using now. We would be much wiser to make sure we're pursuing all of those efficiencies wherever we can, and then thinking about where we really need those clean, green, renewable sources of energy to keep our communities functioning. That's an important piece, and I think we've lost sight of it. Yeah. We'll take that feedback back too. Yeah, because I have seen other municipalities.
I think that every day.
Yeah.
Suggestion box? Whiteboard?
All right, we have another question back here.
Okay. So actually, it's two questions. First one is, does the Better Homes Hamilton, does that also help make housing affordable? Because we have a housing crisis.
I wouldn't say that it makes housing affordable, but what we are very in tune to with the program is ensuring and trying to come up with a really robust framework in which tenants are not going to be negatively impacted, for example. So you can't, if the retrofits that you're going to be implementing, if you have a tenant, I'm going to put in the property owner agreement, you have to sign that you are not going to cause undue displacement or harm to your tenants. I mean, for us, I mean, and the piece that I've been focusing most on is the tenant protection aspect of this, but I haven't thought, I'm trying to think of like maybe a broader way to look at this in terms of housing affordability. But the loan program itself, the way it was designed, was trying to find a way to make it more affordable for people who may be having some affordability issues to still participate in this program. But there's a big difference between affordable and the housing crisis. I mean, there's a wide gap there. But I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
One thing I would add quickly, though, we were also talking about the need to retrofit every building in this community and make sure that we're building new buildings in climate resilient ways. And I would say, in Hamilton, we've got, shining star examples, City Housing Hamilton, Indwell, the YWCA, entities that have committed to building climate resilient, either retrofitting to passive house standards or building brand new to really high climate resilient standards. And I think that model, when we're talking about housing and housing affordability, is really important, because what it's demonstrating, and I think the more we see these kinds of construction methods adopted, is that they bring down in substantial ways the cost to heat and cool a living space. So I look at that as, oh my gosh, it's fantastic because it's helping with the climate crisis, but it's creating spaces, whether whether it's a rental apartment or a space that someone owns and lives in, where it then costs less to actually live in that space, because that, if you imagine how much someone would typically be paying for heating and cooling of a space, that can be incredibly expensive. So I think some of these shifts over time are going to help on that front. But yeah, totally acknowledge that right now we are in a housing crisis, and we need more spaces for people to live in as well. That's important to talk about. But if they're climate resilient, it's gonna help in other ways on the costing side.
My other question is the repairs for these new energy efficient equipment, appliances and furnaces. Will the homeowner have to put out costs for those, or is that covered under the Better Homes Hamilton program? Like for repairs?
Repairs for newly installed?
Yes.
Well, that would just, the homeowner would be responsible for that. That would just be a part of, hopefully you maintain it well, and in the case that you do need to get a repair, that is not a part of the loan program. And in fact, I don't know, did that ever come up?
Well, I would imagine, if it's a newly installed system, you probably just like a fossil fuel powered furnace, you probably buy a warranty, right? Just in terms of whoever installs the system for you, you'd probably have a warranty that would cover the system over a certain amount of time.
Thank you so much, everyone. We had no idea that the discussion would be this lively, right? We had promised that this would be a 1-hour event, and we're already...
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's all right. No, this is so wonderful. This is clearly a group of people that care. So we'd like to continue whatever questions and discussions you have over refreshments. We have decaf and caffeinated coffee in the back, and sweets. But let's wrap this part up so we can also let the folks on the live stream go home. But can we thank our guests one more time for their excellent...
And just quickly, for those who are here live, we did bring along some native plant and tree seeds. So if you're interested, feel free to come up. We've got common milkweed seeds and little envelopes that I made, so you can put them in an envelope, and there are germination instructions. And then we've also got Kentucky coffee tree seed pods. And so Kentucky coffee tree, if you're not familiar with it, is a Carolinian species, so they naturally occur along the Niagara Escarpment here. You don't find them much further north than here. So the Hamilton's in sort of the northern stretch of the Carolinian range. So feel free, it's addictive, I'll tell you, because I love dabbling with growing stuff. But this is one thing that we're trying to encourage people to do. If you want to give it a try, please come on up and help yourself.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. And we hope that you'll join us for future Cathedral Chats. Thank you so much.
Thank you.